When a young clerk humiliates a 73-year-old veteran over $20 for his heart pills, he walks away defeated. But what happens when a small town learns who he really is? You won't believe the crowd that gathers to set things right. I've walked these streets of Willow Creek, Indiana for nigh on 50 years, and I swear the lilacs smell sweeter every spring. But today, as I limped toward Willow Creek Pharmacy, the scent didn't lift my spirits like it used to. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement, and my old green jacket, faded from decades of wear, felt heavier than it should. The bronze star pin on my chest, a quiet reminder of Vietnam, glinted faintly, but it didn't change the fact that my wallet was near empty. At 73, with a shrapnel wound that still ached in my left leg, I was just trying to pick up my heart pills. Simple enough, you'd think. But life has a way of reminding you that nothing's ever simple. My name's James Thompson. Jim to most folks around here. I served in 68 Da Nang, with men who became closer than brothers. I came home to a country that didn't always want me, married my Ellen, and built a quiet life. Now, with her gone, and my pension stretched thin, I'm just a limping old man trying to keep my ticker going. The pharmacy was my last stop today, and I'd counted out $120 in crumpled bills, praying it'd cover the prescription. Prices had been creeping up, though, and a knot of worry sat heavy in my gut as I pushed open the glass door, my cane tapping on the tile. Inside, the place was a hive of noise, fluorescent lights buzzing, folks shuffling in line, the faint beep of the register. I held the door for a young mother wrestling with a stroller, her toddler fussing inside. She flashed me a tired smile, and I tipped my head, same as always. Manners don't cost a dime, my daddy used to say, and I've lived by that. I joined the line, clutching my prescription slip like it was a lifeline. My leg throbbed, but I ignored it, letting my mind drift to Ellen. She'd have handled this errand with a hum and a laugh, probably charmed the clerk into a discount. God, I missed her. The line moved slow, and I finally reached the counter, where a kid, couldn't have been more than 19, stood tapping at the register. His name tag, crooked as a dog's hind leg, read Derek. He had that bored look young folks get when they think the world owes them something. I slid my prescription across the counter, keeping my voice steady. Afternoon, son. Just need my pills. Derek barely looked up, scanning the slip like it was a chore. Name? He said, flat as day-old soda. James Thompson, I answered, resting my cane against the counter. My fingers brushed the bronze star pin, more out of habit than anything. He punched my name into the computer, then gave me a look that made my skin prickle. That'll be $142.67. The number hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd budgeted $120, every penny scraped from a pension that barely covered my groceries and rent. I opened my wallet, revealing a few worn bills and a photo of Ellen, her smile frozen in time. I thought it was $120 last month, I said, keeping my tone even, though my heart was racing. Can you check for a discount? I'm a veteran, served in Nam. Derek snorted, loud enough for the folks behind me to glance over. Veteran, huh? Doesn't change the price, old man. You got the money or not? Old man. The word stung worse than shrapnel, cutting through the armor of my years. I straightened, my jaw tight, but I wasn't about to beg. I've got $120, I said, my voice low. Can you work with that? He rolled his eyes, leaning forward with a smirk that made my blood simmer. This ain't a charity, Grandpa. Pay up or step aside. You're holding up the line. I felt the eyes on me, customers shifting, some curious, some annoyed. A woman in nurse's scrubs frowned, her name tag reading Linda. A teenage boy in a hoodie smirked, his phone aimed at me like a weapon. I wanted to tell them I'd faced mortars and jungles, that I'd carried men to safety under fire, but what good would it do? Pride kept my lips sealed, but it didn't stop the heat creeping up my neck. Son, I said, slow and deliberate, I'm just asking for a little help. I need this medicine to live. Derek leaned closer, his voice dripping with mockery. Look, Grandpa, you think you're special because you were in some war? Rules are rules. Pay or get out. The air in the pharmacy turned thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. Linda, the nurse, stepped forward, her voice sharp. That's no way to talk to him. He's a customer, same as anyone. Derek shrugged, unfazed. Rules are rules. You want to pay for him, lady? A man behind me, big guy in a flannel shirt, barked, Move it along, old-timer. Some of us got places to be. His words were like gravel, grinding down what little patience I had left. I looked at the bills in my hand, then at Derek's smug face. Part of me wanted to slam my cane on the counter, to tell him about the nights I spent in foxholes, the friends I buried, the promises I kept. But I didn't. I slid the $120 back into my wallet, picked up my cane, and turned for the door. All right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll figure it out. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the prescription slip, my hands shaking. Not from age, but from the kind of anger that burns slow and deep. I'd fought for this country, for these people, and now I couldn't even afford the pills to keep my heart beating. Ain't that a hell of a thing? I didn't know that kid, Ethan, had posted his video online, captioned with some nonsense about an entitled old guy. I didn't know it was spreading across Willow Creek's X pages, stirring up folks who knew me and folks who didn't. All I knew was the ache in my leg and the weight of being dismissed in a town I'd called home since I came back from the war. Across the street, in the parking lot of Harper's Hardware, Tom Bradley sat in his black pickup, his hands tight on the wheel. Tom and I go way back, Da Nang. 68, when we were just kids ourselves, dodging bullets and sharing cigarettes under the stars. He'd been picking up paint when he saw me head into the pharmacy. Now, watching me limp out, my shoulders slumped, he knew something was wrong. Tom's not the type to let things slide. Never was. Back inside, Linda was still at it, her voice rising as she laid into Derek. You could have checked for a discount. That man served our country. Derek just smirked, ringing up the next customer. Yeah, well, he's not serving it now, is he? I leaned against a lamp post, catching my breath. The prescription slip felt like a stone in my pocket, heavy with failure. I didn't know about the video or the whispers starting to spread. I didn't know that Willow Creek was about to show me it hadn't forgotten who I was. All I knew was the quiet rage of a man who'd given everything, only to be told he wasn't worth $20. The spring breeze that carried the lilac scent didn't do a damn thing to cool the fire in my chest as I limped away from Willow Creek Pharmacy. My cane tapped a steady rhythm on the cracked sidewalk of Main Street, each step a reminder of the shrapnel still lodged in my leg from 68. At 73, I've taken worse hits. Mortar fire in Da Nang, the ache of losing my Ellen. But being brushed off by that smug clerk Derek in front of a crowd? That was a wound no bandage could fix. My name's Jim Thompson, and I've spent my life keeping my head high. But right then, I felt about as small as a man can get. The prescription slip in my pocket felt like a lead weight, a crumpled piece of paper telling me I couldn't afford the pills keeping my ticker going. I'd scraped together $120, every penny a battle against a pension that barely covered my coffee and rent. Derek's voice, sharp, mocking, calling me Grandpa, echoed in my head. I wanted to march back and tell him I'd carried men through jungles, watched friends fall, earned the Bronze Star pinned to my faded green jacket. But what's the use? Kids like that don't care about yesterday. They barely care about today. Main Street buzzed around me, cars humming past, a dog yapping somewhere, kids laughing as they zipped by on skateboards. I kept walking, not ready to face the quiet of my house on Cedar Lane. Without Ellen, it was just walls and memories, too still for a day like this. My leg ached, but my heart ached worse, so I aimed for the Veterans Memorial a block away. It's a small plaza, Just a flagpole and a granite slab with names of boys who never made it home. I go there when the world gets heavy, when I need to remember who I am. Back at the pharmacy, things weren't settling down. I didn't know it then, but Linda, the nurse in scrubs who'd spoken bust called my name, was still at the counter, giving Derek hell. I could picture her, arms crossed, her voice cutting like a blade. "You didn't even check for a veteran discount," she said, her words sharp enough to draw blood. "That man served our country, and you treated him like garbage." Derek, all of 19 and full of himself, just shrugged, wiping the counter like it was his life's work. "Prices are prices, lady. He didn't have the cash. What am I supposed to do, give it to him for free?" His crooked name tag glinted under the fluorescent lights, and his smirk was as loud as his words. A big guy in a flannel shirt, Greg, I learned later, snorted from the line. "Can we speed this up? I've got better things to do than listen to this drama." Linda turned on him, her eyes blazing. "Drama? That man needed medicine, and you all just watched him get humiliated." Greg rolled his eyes, his voice like gravel. "He's old. He'll figure it out, or he won't. Not my problem." That damn kid Ethan was still there, snickering in the back, his phone glued to his hand. He tapped out another post on X. "Pharmacy drama part 2. Old guy's gone, but people are still fighting over him. LOL." His video from earlier, mocking me as some entitled geezer, was spreading across Willow Creek's X pages. Comments were piling up. Some cruel, calling me a freeloader, others angry on my behalf. A user named at Willow Vet wrote, "That's Jim Thompson, Bronze Star hero. This is disgusting." I didn't know any of this, of course. All I knew was the weight of my failure, heavy as the jungle mud I used to slog through. I reached the memorial, the flag snapping in the breeze above the granite slab. The names carved there, boys I'd known, boys I'd buried, stared back at me. I leaned on my cane, my mind drifting to 68, to nights under the stars with Tom Bradley, my squad mate, trading stories to keep the fear at bay. I didn't notice the group of teenagers lounging on the benches, tossing a football like they owned the place. One of them, Ethan, the same kid from the pharmacy, spotted me and grinned like a fox in a henhouse. "Yo, that's the guy from the video," he whispered to his buddies, loud enough for me to hear. He called out, "Hey, Pops, couldn't afford your pills, huh? Maybe try selling that old jacket for cash." I stopped, my cane digging into the dirt. My eyes met his, and I saw nothing but a kid too young to know better, too dumb to care. "Son," I said, slow and steady, "I don't want trouble. Just trying to get by. Same as you." His friends laughed, egging him on. "Get by?" Ethan sneered. "You're holding up lines and whining about discounts. Maybe get a job, old man." The words hit like a slap, but I've heard worse. Folks called me worse when I came back from Nam, their spits and curses sharper than any bullet. I straightened, my old military spine kicking in. "I fought so you could sit there and run your mouth," I said, my voice low but hard as steel. "Hope you never learn what that costs." For a second, they went quiet, caught off guard by the weight of my words. But Ethan, eager to play the big man, tossed his football my way. Not hard, but enough to make me flinch. It bounced off the pavement and rolled into the grass near the memorial. I didn't move to pick it up. My knuckles whitened around my cane, and I thought, Lord, give me the strength not to teach this boy a lesson he won't forget. Across town, Tom Bradley was sitting in his black pickup outside Harper's Hardware. He'd seen me leave the pharmacy, my shoulders slumped like I'd lost a war. Tom and I go back to 68, two scared kids in Da Nang, sharing cigarettes and promises to make it home. He was picking up paint when he spotted me heading in, and now, watching me limp away, he knew something was wrong. His hands tightened on the wheel, and he started the truck, heading toward the memorial. Tom's not the type to let a brother fall. Never was. I didn't see him pull into the plaza's lot, but I felt the air shift when he stepped out. The teenagers did too. Tom's a big man, broad as a barn, with a face weathered by jungles and time. He strode over. his boots heavy on the pavement. And the kids froze. "You boys got a problem?" he asked, his voice low, like the rumble of thunder. Ethan stammered, his bravado melting. No, just messing around, sir." Tom picked up the football and tossed it back, hard enough to make Ethan stumble. "Mess somewhere else," he said. The kids grabbed their skateboards and scattered, muttering apologies under their breath. I turned to Tom, managing a half smile. "Didn't need saving, you know." He chuckled, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Yeah, well, I wasn't saving you. I was saving them." We sat on a bench by the memorial, the flag's shadow dancing across the granite. I didn't tell him about the pharmacy, and he didn't ask. We didn't need to. After what we'd been through together, words were just extra weight. But my mind was still there, in that fluorescent-lit hell, replaying Derek's smirk, the crowd's silence, the $22.67 I didn't have. Pride told me to let it go, to find another way. But my heart, weak as it was, needed those pills. I didn't know that X-Post was spreading like wildfire. A reporter named Sarah Jenkins, who'd written about Willow Creek's veterans years ago, saw Ethan's video and recognized me. She posted, "This is James Thompson, Bronze Star recipient, humiliated at our pharmacy. We can do better, Willow Creek." Her words were catching, reaching veterans groups, shop owners, even the mayor's office. Comments flooded in, some calling for blood, others for justice. Back at the pharmacy, Derek was joking with a coworker, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. Linda had gone to the back to talk to Dr. Margaret Hayes, a senior pharmacist who'd been in a meeting during my run-in with Derek. When Linda told her what happened, Margaret's face turned to stone. "You let a veteran walk away without his medication over $20? She snapped. Derek shrugged, his smirk faltering. "He didn't have the money. What was I supposed to do?" "Your job," Margaret shot back. "You could have checked for assistance programs. You think this is a game?" Outside, a crowd was starting to form. Folks who'd seen the post, heard the whispers. A retired teacher, a mechanic, a few VFW guys with coffee cups and old grudges. They weren't shouting, but their presence was like a storm cloud, heavy and waiting to break. I didn't know any of this. Sitting there, staring at those names on the granite, I was wrestling with myself. Go back and fight for those pills? Or swallow my pride and figure out another way? Pride was winning, but it was a hollow victory. All I could think about was Ellen. How she'd have marched back in there, sweet as pie but tough as nails, and set things right. Me? I was just tired. Tom broke the silence. "You need those pills, Jim. Let's go back." I shook my head, my voice rough. "I don't want to fight, Tom. I just want to get by." He leaned forward, his eyes steady as ever. "No fight. Just you getting what you're owed." I didn't know it yet, but Willow Creek was waking up. The hum of voices was growing, footsteps echoing down Main Street. Something was coming, and it was bigger than me. The stars were just starting to prick through the indigo sky above Willow Creek, Indiana, as I sat on a bench by the Veterans Memorial, my cane resting across my knees like an old friend. The flagpole's shadow stretched long across the granite slab behind me, where names of boys I'd known, boys who never made it home, stared back in silent judgment. My name's Jim Thompson, and at 73, I've carried heavier burdens than most. The jungles of Vietnam, the loss of my Ellen, the slow bleed of a pension that doesn't stretch far enough. But tonight, the weight of that pharmacy clerk's sneer, Derek with his crooked name tag and sharper tongue, felt like the heaviest load yet. I'd walked out of Willow Creek Pharmacy with nothing but a crumpled prescription slip and a bruised pride, $22.67 short of the heart pills I needed to keep going. Tom Bradley, my squad mate from 68, stood nearby, his broad shoulders cutting a silhouette against the streetlights. His face, weathered by time and war, was set in that quiet resolve I'd seen in Da Nang, when we'd hauled each other through hell. The run-in with those teenagers earlier, punks tossing their football and their insults, had lit a spark in him, but I could tell he sensed something bigger brewing. "Come on, Jim," he said, his voice low, like the rumble of a distant storm. "You need those pills. Let's go back. I rubbed my temple, the ache in my leg pulsing in time with my heartbeat. I don't want a scene, Tom, I said, my voice rougher than I meant. I just want to get by. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, firm but kind. No scene. Just you getting what you're owed. I didn't want to go back to that fluorescent-lit cage to face Derek's smirk or the crowd's stares. But Tom's eyes, steady as they were in '68, told me I didn't have a choice. I stood, my cane tapping the ground, and followed him toward Main Street. My mind was a tangle of pride and need. Pride that said I'd fought for this country and deserved better. Need that whispered I couldn't survive without those pills. The bronze star pinned to my faded green jacket felt like a lie, a relic from a time when I was more than just an old man scraping by. As we rounded the corner onto Main Street, I stopped dead. A crowd, 30, maybe 40 people, had gathered outside Willow Creek Pharmacy, their faces lit by the neon sign's glow. They weren't shouting, but their presence was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. Some held signs scrawled on cardboard, "Respect our veterans" and "Justice for Jim." Others just stood, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the pharmacy's glass door. I saw faces I knew. Clara Evans, who taught history at the high school. Ray, the mechanic who'd fixed my old pickup. Betty, the diner waitress who poured my coffee every Sunday. But there were strangers, too. Folks I'd never met, all standing together like they were waiting for something. "What in the world?" I muttered, my grip tightening on my cane. Tom's eyes widened, but he kept his cool. "Looks like word got out, brother." I didn't know it then, but that kid Ethan's video, the one mocking me as some entitled geezer, had spread across Willow Creek's X pages, stirring up a firestorm. Sarah Jenkins, a reporter who'd written about our town's veterans years back, had seen it and recognized me. Her post, "This is James Thompson, Bronze Star recipient, humiliated at our pharmacy. We can do better, Willow Creek," had lit a match, reaching veterans groups, shop owners, even the mayor's office. Comments were flooding in, some calling for blood, others for justice. A news van was parked nearby, its crew scrambling to set up cameras, their lights cutting through the dusk. Sarah spotted me and hurried over, her notebook tucked under her arm. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "These people are here for you. They saw what happened. They're not letting it slide." My throat tightened, and I looked at the faces in the crowd. Old friends, neighbors, strangers, all standing there like I meant something. I just needed my medicine," I said, my voice catching. I wasn't used to this, folks standing up for me. In '68, when I came home, half the country spat at men like me. Now, here was Willow Creek, showing up when I thought I'd been forgotten. Hank Carter, a Desert Storm vet with a VFW cap pulled low, stepped forward. He held a small folded flag, the kind you keep in your pocket for years, worn but sacred. "This is from all of us," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're not alone, Jim." I took the flag, my hands trembling, not from age, but from the weight of it all. My eyes stung, but I blinked hard, keeping my composure. I'd faced worse than this, and come out standing. "Thank you," I said, my voice low, but steady. The crowd erupted in applause, not loud, but deep, like a heartbeat shared across the street. Inside the pharmacy, Derek was coming apart at the seams. I didn't see it, but Dr. Margaret Hayes, the senior pharmacist who'd been in the back earlier, had just gotten off the phone with corporate. Her face was stone as she tore into him. "You turned away a veteran over $20, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Corporate's covering his medication, and they're applying a veteran discount retroactively. You're lucky you're not out of a job." Derek's smirk was gone, replaced by a nervous sweat. He glanced out the window at the crowd, now swelling to nearly 40, their signs and stares boring into him. "What's their deal?" he muttered to a coworker, his voice cracking. Linda, the nurse who'd fought for me earlier, was outside now, speaking to the crowd. "He just needed his heart meds," she said, her voice carrying like a preacher's. and that clerk humiliated him in front of everyone. Clara Evans, her cardboard sign raised high, shook her head. Jim helped my husband rebuild our porch after the flood. Never asked for a dime. This isn't right. Ray, the mechanic, folded his arms, his voice low but fierce. I served with guys like Jim. You don't disrespect a man who's been through what he has. Betty, the waitress, wiped her eyes with a napkin. He always tips, even when he's short. Always asks about my kids. This ain't the Willow Creek I know. Sarah's phone buzzed, a message from the mayor's office. Someone was on their way. She scribbled notes, her eyes bright with the kind of fire you see in folks who smell a story that matters. Dr. Hayes pushed Derek toward the door. Go out there and make this right, she snapped. He hesitated, his face pale, then stepped outside, blinking against the camera flashes. The crowd went quiet, their eyes pinning him like a bug on a board. We're sorry, he stammered, his voice barely audible. Mr. Thompson's meds are covered. He can come back. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Clara's sign didn't waver. Sorry doesn't cut it, she said. You disrespected a hero. Before Derek could say more, Dr. Hayes emerged, holding a small paper bag with my medication. She walked past him, her heels clicking on the pavement, and approached me. Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice steady but warm. This is yours. It's fully covered, and I've added you to our Veteran Assistance Program. This won't happen again. I'm sorry for what you went through. I took the bag, slipping it into my pocket next to Hank's flag. Thank you, ma'am, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I looked at the crowd, Clara, Ray, Betty, Hank, and all the rest, and tipped my head, a gesture that said more than words could. Then I turned, my cane tapping, and limped away with Tom at my side. The news crew caught it all, and Sarah's story would air that night, titled, A Town Stands for Its Hero. The crowd started to disperse, their murmurs filled with pride, not anger. Derek slunk back inside, his face red as a beet, knowing he'd been outdone by a man he'd written off. As Tom and I walked back toward the memorial, the flag in my pocket felt heavier than the pills. I didn't say much, but when we reached the granite slab, I paused, running my fingers over the names. Didn't expect all that, I said, my voice soft as the night. Tom grinned, his eyes glinting. You never do, brother. The stars shone brighter now, and for the first time that day, I felt the weight lift. Just a fraction. Willow Creek had remembered me, and that was worth more than any medicine.